and you are tuned into the Ashraf.
I certainly hope from a Ramadan perspective, you found the fire in Ramadan, if I can call it that, if you found a way to be totally fired up with different aspects of Ramadan that will impact you and change your life. But saying that, we'll talk to Ashraf, the other Ashraf Gangrekar, about being fired up just now. Not quite now, in a few minutes' time. Now, if I told you that increasing numbers of people in Cairo, maybe other parts of Egypt, are going to the streets for iftar, the breaking of the fast, would you be impressed enough to say, well, that's good, that shows the wonderful communal spirit of Ramadan? Yes, you would. But if I then told you that those numbers are increasing because many people have no other food, that means we're linking that to poverty and desperation. Would you still be impressed? I would think not. Let's get the backstory to all of that with my guest, Dr. Mona Amir, who's the professor of clinical and community psychology at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Amir, appreciate your time. Thank you. Assalamu
Thank you
alaikum.
very much. Walaikum salam and
Thank
Ramadan
you.
Kareem.
Absolutely. And I trust it's been going well for you so far, inshallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the issue that I've raised about the increasing numbers of people attending these iftar street meals, right? So yeah, as you probably heard in my intro, on the one hand, one can be impressed, but I'm suggesting that you're saying there's another reason behind that in Cairo.
Well, actually, we're not too, I mean, there's different perspectives or different observations. Some people are saying that there's a decrease in the number of tables and or the types of food or the comprehensiveness of the meal in these Ramadan tables or the Mawa'id Rahman in Egypt. And other people are observing, oh no, there's an increase in number of people attending the tables, but the number of tables that are available are just as just the same as ever. So it's kind of hard to tell, and it's kind of hard also to tell the trends over time because we had this break during COVID-19, and last year was just a little bit of sort of resurgence, but this year people are up in like full force. So we have to really compare to 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it's really hard to see that trend. But in all cases, it does seem that the economy is influencing in some way or another these types of communal iftars. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I mean, I think on the one hand, if we say if people are coming out in bigger numbers, on the one hand, that sounds good. But if they're coming out because they have no food at home, that would be problematic. The second part you made, which is if the numbers of items on the food table are less, that means more people have to share from that, and that suggests that those that are the givers of these meals or providing the meals, they themselves are finding it a battle to maintain that because obviously it does cost money. All that points to economic worsening of conditions in your country, right?
I mean, it could for sure if these trends that people are observing actually pan out, or that there's actually data behind it. For sure, it could be an indicator. But I do think it's important to remember that we don't actually have sophisticated data mapping of these tables, even though people should be receiving permits to get to get the tables. So we're not really sure. I mean, without in the absence of actual data, I don't know that we can come to any conclusion. And I think it's also important to remember too that we are in a post-COVID resurgence of the Ramadan spirit. And there's also, we've seen an increase in other aspects of Ramadan decorations, lighting, commodities that are celebrating Ramadan. So to what extent there really is an increase or a decrease is at the national level or at the city level is hard to
Yeah.
pinpoint. But we do know that there are.
Fair, yeah. Well, I mean that's fair comment. So I certainly would want to take a closer look at it anyway. Perhaps it's a good time then to talk about just the history and the tradition of that. Now, in South Africa, it does not happen. We're very much a minority Muslim nation, about 3% Muslims, roughly, maybe 4 or 5. But you may get the odd 1 or 2 days, like particularly in Cape Town, in the Boekap region, of a predominantly Muslim community where people come out. But it's not an everyday occurrence, right? But we know that it happens in many other countries of the world. But so let's talk about Egypt. I mean, what's the history behind these these food tables or iftar tables that come out at sunset for the breaking of the fast?
Well, I mean, this has been a tradition for centuries, and some people trace it back to Ahmed bin Talun, that he sort of made a model of offering iftar to poor people and tried to encourage other people of nobility to do the same. And there are some accounts that the tradition even traces back further to the Fatimid period, where the Caliph Mu'izz-ad-Din al-Fatimi had a really large banquet. In Egypt, it's a very notable tradition. At iftar time, anywhere you drive or go or walk in the streets, you'll find in different places, these tables. Sometimes they're very simple, just a string of tables next to each other, and you know that this is a place where you can sit down to break your fast. And other times they're more lavish and stately, like big tents with, colorful decorations and things like that. So.
Yeah, and I know it's difficult to say because you made the point about there's no data modeling around it, but even anecdotally, what's the percentage of the population that will actually eat at these tables every day? I mean, is there any way to even just give a guess on that?
No, I mean, we can say, I mean, a few years ago, they had estimated about like 2 million or more Egyptians sitting at these tables, but I'm not sure this year or in general what is the trend. And also, the trends and numbers are really influenced by the date, the time of the the year. If there's school exams the next day, if it's a weekend or not, if there's any other kind of event happening. So it's not something that you can kind of generalize across the month
Yeah,
or
that's a good
across
point.
the
Yeah.
years.
Now, just to give the South African perspective, whereas we hardly have the street iftars, what we do have is most of the mosques at the time of the iftar or following immediately thereafter the Maghrib Salah, right? They certainly do cater in the mosques. So that's not
Mhm.
for the general public where people come out in big numbers, but these are people who are worshippers, who are musallis, who are going to perform the Maghrib Salah immediately thereafter, who come out there, and by and large it's for those that wish just to have a date or two, that's fine, but for others that at least they know there's some bites that they can have for those who are impoverished. And that tradition, I would think, is widespread in South Africa. Do you have the same thing in Egypt?
Yeah, for sure. The mosques are involved in a lot of these Mu'aid Rahman, these iftar tables, tables of mercy, really is what it's called, Mu'aid Rahman. And sometimes they are held in the mosque, or especially smaller ones. Um, but there's lots of other ways, you are right, of mosques supporting people with food. There's like food drives where people collect meals and pass it out to people. There's sort of like iftar boxes that people distribute in different districts. So there's lots of different ways that iftar is shared and offered to people of diverse backgrounds in Egypt. The iftar, the Mu'aid Rahman, the mercy tables, those are the most iconic, methods. So yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's on my wish list, inshallah, to spend some parts of my Ramadan in some parts of the Middle East, starting with maybe Egypt, and then the Gulf states, and perhaps go to Turkey and see what happens, and maybe West Africa too, and see what comes out of that, and whether I can sit on one of those iftar mercy tables. Inshallah, you never know. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Dr.
Inshallah.
Mona Amir. Appreciate your
Thank you
time.
very much. Nice to see you.
There we are.
Bye.
Thank you. That is so fascinating. In fact, I mean, and yes, we've done this. What's it like uh, adhering to the fast of Ramadan in other parts of the world? Yes, we've talked about it before. I know that, but still, there's also personal stories. And perhaps if you listening, wherever you may be in the world, in the Gulf, in West Africa, in North Africa, in Southeast Asia, in the USA, wherever you want to be, maybe what's your Ramadan experience like versus what's my Ramadan experience like? I'd certainly love to know. We're gonna get fired up. We'll do that in a moment.